Hello and good afternoon or good morning, depending on where you're tuning in from. Today, we're going to be talking about Arkade, and Arkade is an open source marketplace for Kubernetes apps. And you might be wondering, why do we need that? Well, we're going to get into that today. And I also want to give some time to show you how you can contribute and add your own apps. I'm going to be inviting Alistair Hay on in a moment. But really, this session is also for you. So everybody that's joined, if you're an existing user, comment, tell us what you like about it. Tell us what your one wish is. If you've never used Arkade before and you're kind of curious, again, ask us your questions and we would love to try and answer as many as we can. So now I'm going to bring on Alistair. And as we get to the second half of the session, Alistair's going to do some live coding and show us how to actually add an app. And we're going to update one of the CLIs that you can download too. So Alistair, if you're ready, let's get you up here. Hello, Alistair.
Hi, Alex. It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, well, I think just trying to think back now, when we started Arkade, probably wasn't even called that, was it? Do you remember how it started?
Yeah, well, it started as part of the K8s project, K3s Up, which you originally was starting to use to spin up K3s clusters, and as part of that, we started to add like applications, so you could do K3s Up app install to install your favorite apps. I think we started with OpenFaaS on brand, being part of the OpenFaaS community. And we used it initially to speed up the installation of OpenFaaS.
Yes.
Basically.
Yeah, I mean, I remember talking to Ed Wild when he was contributing quite actively, and we had this great grand plan to build a CLI to install OpenFaaS, and it was going to work just like Minikube and have plugins and drivers and multiple different packages to do all the colors and emojis. And then in the end, all we really needed was a Helm install and those sort of 6 commands. Even though they were quite easy and they were documented, it was typing them in, doing them in the right order, not forgetting to create the password and things like that. And so, yeah, it became a quick add-on for K8s. But really, K8s itself, that goes back to 2019 when I was doing some consulting work for Civo. And I wanted to, I went down there to do a workshop for them and teach them a bit about Kubernetes. And decided, okay, what we'll do is we'll use K3s instead of kubeadmin, just a bit more lightweight. Set it up, and I just realized how complicated it was. Even a very easy tool, it meant creating the VM, adding the SSH key, connecting, doing the install, finding the kube config, changing its permission, copying it back, changing the IP in it, updating the TLS SAN, and goodness knows whatever else. And so I thought, well, why don't I just do this with SSH and build a CLI? That was K8s. And then as I wrote tutorials for different customers, which was actually helping me pay my mortgage, it was like, okay, I remember one example going back to Arkade, and it was a 5,000 word blog post. It was really technical, how to set up a TLS registry on Kubernetes and get cert manager, right? 5,000 words for that one. And it's still largely valid today, but I think it was so long ago, and they were even using Helm 2 and Tiller. When you look at things today with Arkade, maybe we'll get a chance to bring this web page up later. We can do it in 5 commands, right? So if you're thinking about how to drive traffic to your cloud, a Civo, a Linode, a DigitalOcean, 5 commands versus a 5,000 word essay, it really increases the speed of experimentation. I don't know if we have Lucas here, but how have you used Arkade when you've sort of gone about doing your development?
So I pretty much use it every day. I'm developing OpenFast now. It's the quickest and easiest way to install OpenFast, right? You want an OpenFast installation, Arkade install OpenFast, default settings. I think it was Lucas originally who wrote a blog post about how you can, in your PR, you can give a one-line command now to install OpenFast on Kubernetes cluster with the container that's built from that PR. And part of GitHub Actions, we migrated to GitHub Actions. Now anyone who wants to contribute to OpenFast can fork the repo. If they add their GitHub token to the right place in their fork, it will automatically publish it to their their public forks container registry, and then you can provide that one command now to just say, look, hey, OpenFast maintainers, this is how you can check my PR live, which is really, really useful. I mean, I use it for every time I install OpenFast. I don't think I've done it the old way since it was in K3s up. So
let's see what they both look like. So this is the old way, Arkade install. Oh, this is a new way, Arkade install OpenFast. The older way is find the Helm chart, find the repo, go into the right folder, and then read everything to make sure you've got all the options that you need, that you've installed Helm, found the binary, that you've applied the namespaces, that you've created a secret, and done an add of the repo. So it's not a lot of bits, but actually if you scroll down, and most Helm charts tend to be like this, you find this chart at the end of it. Now I see Batuhan is here, and he was sharing recently, I don't know if you can send us a link into the chat, about this tool, and it could generate these Helm chart tables. That's how complicated they are now to maintain all these options. And so what we can also do with Arkade is, you see that simple command for install, but we can actually go and say, right, let's take the Helm command, gateway.replicas equals 2. Well, we should see somewhere down here, gateway replicas, right? And we can learn that by looking at it. But on the CLI, we've been able to create a strongly typed flag, -- gateways. Now, what that means is, as a human being with far too much to do and far too many distractions and tweets to read, I can simply do -- help, get the message up. And I don't have to figure out what the Helm commands are or copy and paste and save them somewhere. Now, we also showed an example. I remember Carlos Panato was going through this one. And I wanted to show you, right, you've installed OpenFast. Now you want to install it with a patched version of your code. I see Sander has joined us from Waylay. Sander, thanks for joining. Now, let's say that you wanted to patch the version of OpenFast that you were using. What would you do? Well, build an image, push it, and then you would figure out the correct set in the values file. Maybe you'd read the chart. Sometimes these, if they're not generated with a tool like Batuhan has, they might not even have the thing that you need to set. It is gateway.image. And it turns out that we didn't actually specify that, maybe because it's just quite, everything has a .image. So then we can actually do it like this. Right? Faznetes.image equals. I've pushed my custom image. And when we get pull requests in OpenVAS now, the easiest ones to test are where it says, how has this been tested? And then you'll literally see that one command. And if it's testing something more complicated, like, I don't know, this bug can only be recreated with 3 gateway workers, then we would see that added here as well.
Yeah, and with that -- set, it still allows you to access those deeply nested, complicated values as well. So if you wanted to set one of the other things that we didn't explicitly create a strongly typed flag for, you can still mix and match those as you wish, which is great.
Now, the website for Arkade is getarkade.dev, but it also is on GitHub. one of the things that I did early on was write a blog post that sort of explained what's in it for you, because I think it's not always necessarily clear why you would want to use Arkade if you can use Helm. And you might go, well, look, and you've probably been here or have people at work that have this opinion. Helm is rerunnable. It's what we use in production, right? Why would I want Arkade? What would you say there?
So one of the big benefits that I see is it doesn't matter what architecture you're running on. It doesn't matter what platform your machine is on. If you get the right Arkade version for your machine, Linux, Mac, Windows, you can then install onto a cluster that's running on ARM64 or Graviton, and Arkade will, like, I know in OpenFast, until we were publishing multi-arch images, there were different steps you had to take depending on whether you're running on ARM, a different set of values and images, but Arkade could take care of that for you, and you'd be able to run it everywhere and it would install the same thing for you.
Well, because we were able to run a bit of custom code, and that was the difference when we did have multiple images instead of multi-arches, that we needed to split off and maintain two sets of instructions, one for Raspberry Pi, one for PCs. But we also had different images and values files, and so this just allowed us to automate that. When Helm 2 and Tiller were really popular, they were considered insecure, and to be fair, they were. So what Arkade used to do was it would template the YAML files out for you and then apply them. Moved away from that when Helm 3 just became the de facto standard. But there's three different things here that you might see in an app. The first kind is, like, OpenVAS is a Helm 3 chart, and we're specifically configuring it and wrapping it and making it simpler for you. One command, it even downloads Helm for you if you don't have it. Linkerd and Istio both use their own command line to do the install. They don't really use Helm or recommend it. So what do? Well, let's see what you would do. You would go and type Linkerd CLI. You would go to some docs page. You would see, oh, well, hang on, where's the download link? I just want to get started here. You'd be looking around. There's some curl bash you have to run. Do you really want to do that? There's Homebrew. That's going to take 10 minutes to update. There's a releases page. Is this stable version or not? And there's all of this process. Whereas with Arkade, what we've done is we've already added it in, and you can do an Arkade get and bring a CLI down. Or if you're installing an app that needs a CLI, OpenVAS with Helm, Linkerd with the Linkerd installer, it will grab them for you. And then the third use case is like Portainer. I don't know if this is still true, but they didn't have a Helm chart. It's a static YAML file. Knative is the same. They also have a static YAML file. And so you can't really use Helm with Linkerd. You can't really use Helm with Portainer. And so when people say, why not just use Helm? It's like, well, you can't. So what we've done is just given you one interface to get all of these.
We added some static YAML as well for OpenFast ingress and things like that. Just quality of life stuff. You just like, I want to create the ingress record. I can't remember what that is. Just install the ingress for me and set it up. And you can chain a few of these Arkade install commands together, and suddenly with 4 or 5 commands, like you said, you can have a 5,000 word tutorial down into like these 5 commands done. So
let's see. Typically, if you're doing stuff with Kubernetes, you always want kubectl. Again, like you Google it, you look for the link, you can't find it, and it's some apt package that PPA you don't want to add. Arkade get kubectl. Then you're like, what? Now I need a cluster.
Install the snap, and it's 5 versions out of date.
Yes.
So one thing I found a lot in this space is the package managed versions are sometimes a little bit out of date, and when you're working with the latest Kubernetes versions, it just slows you down. this is one way just to get everything, the latest versions, bring them in from one place.
That's right. Yeah. And I know Batuhan mentioned to me earlier, he was like, I'm writing a tutorial and it's going to download the Argo CLI. Let's update Arkade so it downloads the newest version. And I said, well, there's a version flag. So you and I both use Terraform in our work. And I know Simon Ems that's tuned in, he does a lot of Terraform as well. And so I look at a tutorial, it needs Terraform 11.0.11. I can do Arkade get -- version and get that version. Then I need kubectl 0.21 or 1.21 to test a bug that only happens on that version. Again, I can just go Arkade get version 0, whatever it is, 1.21.3 kubectl, and it will get me that specific version of that component. Now, we've got a few comments, so we'll have a look at that in a second. But the other thing, I guess, is that sometimes these apps just don't work on ARM, right? Whether you're using Graviton at work and you're exploring, performance changes from ARM chips, or you're using on your Raspberry Pi, and you have, my home lab back there. A lot of people complain, maybe you can relate to this yourself. I tried Raspberry Pi Kubernetes, but I couldn't find any apps. What we've done, and I guess what would be a good one to show, we've kind of put some smarts in place so that if you install, let's find OpenVAS, it would just let it go. Like, it will let it go because we know that it can work on your architecture. But if you install Istio, this is something that isn't quite ready for ARM as we speak. Hoping that will change in the near future. But you'll find a bit of code, and it's going to go, Istio is not supported on your Raspberry Pi. Now, it's interesting because we only look at ARM HF, and that's the Raspberry Pi OS. It implies that it's available on 64-bit ARM, which it may well be. So someone's going to have to find out and put that in the comments for us. And so this also solves another problem then, doesn't it? It's, can I get that for my platform? And that's kind of what Arkade is doing. It's also helping you discover these apps. You might not have even known that there was an app for something like Falco. There's an app for Falco now. And if you do help, it tells you what flags we think are useful. And because it's us, we developers, me, Alistair, and you that are watching, adding these apps, we're able to also put an info message at the end. So quite often, I don't want to type in the whole message to get my password from OpenVAS and port forward it. So I'll go Arkade info, and then I'll type in this, and I get what I need again. Right? We just added Argo CD, and Argo does the same thing. Here's an example about the multi-arch. And then everybody, this is the newest sort of feature, everybody has a CLI. It's really annoying. You probably don't need to build your own CLI, but so many people do. We're guilty of it as well. And so you can just get them. I've counted. It's funny. We've got 40 apps and 40 CLIs. So I had to double check because it seemed a bit odd that it was the same number, but we've been busy. And I think Alistair's we're either going to update one of them. I'm going to try and add another app. And just to go back to your composite then, this is the blog post that I mentioned for Sivo. Believe me, it is that long, right, to get the TLS. And my screenshots and my pretty diagrams. All of that now become this. And at the end, you can log in. And that's just one app, right? I can see Michael Cade as well, who lived actually pretty close to me. close to Peterborough. So Michael, I know you have the custom product that came into Veeam. That's something that if it has a Helm chart, we could potentially go and add a sponsored app into Arkade. And we do have our first one from a company called Venify. Venify acquired JetStack. So they're doing great work by helping to fund the best tool for TLS on Kubernetes. And we added them in their own apps. And as part of the project, they also funded some extra open source ones. But their one, so they get Arkade Venify install. They have their own issuers for Cert Manager that are enterprise ready that they go and use with their clients. Again, this is available in the Cert Manager docs, but you can't make it as simple as just an Arkade install. So this, in comparison to what they had originally, is much more succinct.
It lowers that barrier to entry, makes it really easy to get started and start seeing the value. You know, one of the best things for me is that I want to install working with Open Policy Agent at work. Okay, Arkade install OPA, done. Rather than going to the chart, checking what values I need, this, that, and the other, and that's the value there for Venify and lots of these other apps and things that we've created. It's just one line, you want to test it out. Perfect.
Yes.
Get started.
Absolutely. So my general workflow is I run Go build, and we're using Go modules, so it's all nice and easy to manage. And I just run Arkade from there, or I'll go and install it. Let's look at I did a little alias just to maybe I didn't do an alias. Arkade Venify. Let's see, where is it? And then we can do an install and a help. And with anything, there's also an info message, and then you can give an app. So if we're thinking about the OpenFAS, we'll do install OpenFAS-help, because I think that's the question that that Michael was asking. Where are we storing the strong values? Well, the strong values, strongly typed values, are coded. So there's no complex, intelligent JSON file. There's no DSL. There's nothing that's a YAML file that's pulled in from a Docker registry. It's just Go code. We've made it as simple as possible. And Alistair's actually done a really good job of abstracting that so that there's an SDK, and you can use the SDK to add the options. If you need a secret, there's an example of that too. So let me just show you a quick example then. If I want to create a cluster, but I've already got one. So can I give it a name? There we are. Right. So I already have kind, but if I run Arkade get kind, I can download the latest version of it. You see Arkade get kind. Just like that. Right. So we can see the version I was using here, and we've now got a newer version, and I can also pass in a version flag if I happen to know a specific one that I want to grab. The other tools we always kind of want is kubectl as well. Again, slightly bigger binary, 40 megs, a bit longer to download. Now, if I run that on my Raspberry Pi, we've got all the code and the switches to understand how to build a URL. So let's go to one of my Raspberry Pis. And I don't know if we've got Arkade yet. So let's see. I just added in. That was faster than I expected. And this kubectl, as you can see from the URL, is the ARM version. And the way we do this is we put it into a special path, and you can install these into your own directory if you want to. But basically they're in .arkade, and we just save everything there. And then if you add that to your path, you can manage 2 versions, or we don't need sudo basically then to move files. So I've got my Kind cluster. Let's switch into it. We're now switched into it. Now, you're probably expecting me to install OpenVAS, but I'm not going to. Let's see what apps we have. Now, just because Batuhan is here and he did such a good article, I'm going to install Argo CD. And at the end of it, what we've done is gone and written up our own special info message, because the one that they have, it's all right, but we can make it more user friendly, and this gives us the opportunity to do that. So let's see if we can get our pod, if it's ready to be forwarded. It's not quite ready. It's all creating still. But by running those commands, we've got Argo as one command ready to go. We want to install something else, Kubernetes Dashboard. Some people have said, well, it's so easy to install this. Yes and no. It's different for ARM, and then you do need to memorize these commands to create a token. So this is something that you're going to want to do. So you create a user, you proxy the API, you then go and you get this token. And then what do we do next? You then go and you log in and you paste the token in. You go, yeah, but that's easy to do. It's easy, but it's a pain every time. Let me show you what we've got. I can just put my token in. And it just works. And that also will run on my Raspberry Pi and on my my Graviton instance.
Yeah, I definitely have to go to the docs to remember all those commands, so it's good to have them all just there and ready to go.
And likewise, if we wanted to get the Argo CLI, we can do that there. So what's Addison saying? Addison is an Inlets user. Today we had a minor outage. Accidentally update Argo's server while trying to follow their instructions. Yeah, it's difficult. And there are version managers and there's package managers and all that, but really you can't get much faster than one command. Who else is chatting here? So K10, is that the one that we need, Michael, if you want to try out Kasten and Veeam? And then Michael's been, I've seen you using Argo. You should have a look at what we've got on the blog. I think you might like it as well. And those steps look simpler. Yeah, well, go have a look and a play with it. I hope you enjoy it. It's all automated except for the manual.
Yeah.
Now we got halfway through. Hopefully that's giving you all a bit of a taste of what's there. If you want to ask some questions now about what I've shown you, feel free. And then I'll turn it over, as we're sort of waiting, turn it over to you, Alistair, to share. And I think what we were going to do is update the NAT CLI. Derek Collision has emailed me. He said there's a newer version available. And we were also going to try and add an app, InfluxDB, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's the one. So we'll have a go at adding that live on the stream. Should be fun. Do you want me to share my screen?
He said 0.023.
Okay, wonderful. Ooh, there we go. Okay, so
I remember this tiny font from last time we did this, the OpenVAS birthday.
Settings, font size.
What do we do if there's a breaking change in the CLI? What we try to do is make sure things make sense, and because we're able to gatekeep what is going into it. For instance, we want to update the Terraform CLI. We might do that while we're here as well. And I know there's an OpenVAS blog post that says, okay, get Terraform, and then runs Terraform apply. That will fail on 0.15 with what we've got. So we're just holding it back. Now, if there's tutorials we don't know about, we can't really do anything there. But we do sort of pride ourselves on the apps that we've got work together, and they're complementary. So you can composite Cert Manager with OpenVAS and Istio. And that's kind of about the best we can do. You can also, for a CLI, put a specific version in there, -- version.
Yeah. So this is how we define the tools. It might look a bit alien if you're not used to Go templating, but we essentially work out what architecture you're using and then build the URL using these templates, these if statements, to build the right URL or the right place to get the binary from. We were going to look at which one was it, Alex? That's CLI. And which version was it? 0.23? Did you say?
Yes, I did.
Oh, excellent. So that's as easy as that for updating to 0.23 for that CLI. We just have to build that into the binary.
Are there any unit tests that you can run as well if you do a Go test? Yeah. I'm not sure if there's one that's covered there if you need to change that. You run your tests first.
So run all the tests. Hopefully that'll work. And they've all worked. So whatever we were testing for that one hasn't got the specific version in, which is probably a bonus. But that should have. So I've got Arkade installed. That's not the very latest one that I just built. And if we go Arkade get, that's -h. Do we say it?
So did your test pass?
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay.
So I've now built that latest one, and if I do Arkade get,
has anybody in the chat used Go templates before? Do you have a higher contrast themes? I'm finding it quite difficult to read green on green. Midnight blue or something.
Let's go with something. Ooh.
Yeah, that's
better.
So much more visible. So Go templates, you might have seen these in Helm, particularly if you're here because you're interested in Kubernetes. They can be difficult, but on the whole, what we're doing here is saying, right, we're going to input the architecture from the cluster that we figured out. Well, actually, in this case, it's just your architecture of your laptop. We're then going to input your OS, because you could have, you can now have an ARM64 Mac and x86 Mac. So we push both in, and then at the end, you see we're trying to build a URL out of all of those bits. And so you simply add something in, and this is literally how you would do it. When the URLs are standard, relatively standard, we don't need to do this. So there's an example of I don't know, FAS CLI should be easier. And then all we do is say what the end part of the URL is. Go up.
Ooh, yeah.
FAS CLI. Go down.
Yeah.
Stop there. So you see, go up a tiny bit. You see what we're setting is binary template. So that's the last bit. Right on the end of the URL, far right, what's a binary? But the next example is perfect, the Helm, because that isn't on GitHub. We're only downloading binaries here.
URL template, and it builds the whole URL. Yep.
Now, what also gets tricky is sometimes they're on GitHub, and it would be great to just grab them, but the binary doesn't have a V in it, but the URL release name has a V in it. So then we have to use the URL approach, and but don't be put off. It's literally a copy and paste. There's so many examples now. You'll find one for what you've got. And that's what we did for Argo CD recently. Okay, so did that work? We've got that CLI down.
Yeah, it's pulled it down. It's put it in the .arkade directory. So if I export my path to this, I'll just run it. Arkade, and then we've got the bin directory, and then we've got nats, and then can't touch this version. There we are, 0.0.23, which is what we just updated it to. So it's pulled down the very latest, the version that we specified. So
now it would keep on theme if we went and created an app for nats, because we didn't have one yet. But I raised an issue earlier for InfluxDB, because as you know, I've been doing the Grow Lab project, and great to see people participating like Simon, who's here. And so recently I did a little data logger. This sensor in my hand that you can't see is temperature, humidity, and pressure. So I'm using FASD, which is OpenFAS without Kubernetes. I simply added InfluxDB and Grafana to the mix, and then I logged my data, and I can see it right now. We don't have InfluxDB in Arkade. I don't know why. We just don't have it yet. And so why not get it? And then you can take my same data logger setup, and if you've just happened to prefer Kubernetes on your Raspberry Pi, you can go and install it on there instead.
Okay, so as the chart app author, have to go and look at this Helm chart values YAML for you and work out what all of the settings we need are. Well, we're going to go for InfluxDB or InfluxDB2, Alex?
I used 1.8, so the original. So let's do the original one.
Okay, so as the Arkade app developer, I come in here. I have to grab a couple of things. I need the URL that the chart is hosted at, and then in a bit I'll need the path within that Helm chart, that the Helm repository that the chart lives in. But I've just grabbed the URL for now. Today I was making a tool or a command for Arkade to create Arkade apps, and it hasn't been merged in yet, but quite a lot of the code when you're creating an app, a new Helm chart based app, is roughly the same. It's a lot of setup, creating the command so that when we run Arkade, it picks up your new app. So I've built a command called, I think it's called new app, where I can set a name, and I'll show you what it does in a minute.
Why don't you show us one of the apps before you run that command, so you can see what one of the more modern ones with your SDK in it?
Yeah, so I based it off the Loki app. So if we just grab this one, we can have a look. So this is where we've coded in those strongly typed values.
Do you see that, Michael? How we've even been able to set defaults for things as well, and a help message, like to actually explain what it is even for. Yeah,
an example in this one, so you could set that to true if you want to override some of the defaults.
Yeah,
that was probably a copy paste error. And basically we grab the values of the CLI. We set any override we want to set, and these are like the same as going --set Loki URL and putting the Loki URL in the Helm CLI. And we create a sort of a map of those, and then we use this kind of SDK, and we say, I want to install a Helm chart, and I want to use the namespace the user's specified. In this case, if they don't provide one, it will go into the default namespace.
Yeah.
And this is the OpenFAS Loki. It's not the actual Loki one. This was part of a blog post that Lucas was writing. But we can say use this Helm repository. So that's what you do. Helm install Lucas OpenFAS Loki, and then the Helm URL is the URL of the Helm repo. We pass in our overrides, and then we just go install. If we don't get back an error, then the Helm install was successful. And then this one goes and adds some extra config to OpenFAS, actually, so you can do extra bits and pieces. So if we go...
Not everything is in Helm, is it? Like the OpenFAS one has a bunch of those statements. Michael is asking, what if you have different variables for different environments and added a secret? So
let's go and have a look at the OpenFast.
Secret.
So yeah, by default, we enable basic auth in OpenFast. So you'd have to either specify a password or we generate one for you, and then we save that in a secret. So we'll go and there's a lot of options for OpenFast, a lot of different things to configure.
There's a lot less than's in the Helm chart though. That's the main thing.
And also you can do Arkade install OpenFast info, and it will tell you about.
It's an important question here by Michael. Is how would you give the secret? Well, the way that you're doing it will probably work because we have an Arkade install chart. We could like a generic installer, but rather than putting literals on the command line because they're kept in your history, and sometimes even if you put a double space behind them to stop that, they can still get cached in some environments. We think it's a bit more secure if you go and input it from a file. So see the inlet operator, because that's one that takes the password from a file. Hopefully this will be helpful.
Of course.
So
you can provide the license file and the token file. So in that case, we have part of this secrets kind of interface that I created. Let me just find the section.
There it is. So we have these literals, or we have files, and what we're doing is just telling it where it is, and then that will get read off the disk. And because Arkade is code, we can also go, well, that secret file you told us to import, does it really exist? And we can give you a helpful message to say, well, can't find that. And so that's how it. That's just how we do it. And when I did the apps for Venafi, because they working for global 5,000 customers, I said to them, look, your docs just put the password on the command line. I don't think that's the best we can do. And if you look at the Arkade app, I think we went down the route of only allowing it from a file. So we have, the cloud issuer, because there's, what do we have for that? Secret file.
We do have
both, but we recommend the secret file.
Yeah.
And so I'm not sure if K10 is completely open source, if it has some closed part to it, but it might be an open source app or it might be sponsored depending on that. Okay, so back to you. Let's pick back up with this new app thing. This is very new. I haven't even seen this yet.
It's still in pull request review, but I thought I'd demo it live. So essentially, if we go and look at the Loki app again, this is just one of the simplest ones. It's less than 100 lines to install an app. Quite a lot of this is that documentation string we talked about earlier on.
The info message,
The info message. But the core of it really is these few lines here. Tell Arkade where to get the chart from and the values that you want to set, and then it will install it. So if you want to add an app as a default, so I think InfluxDB, you can, looking at their commands here, you can just install it without any options.
Let's zoom in a little bit.
Yeah.
So they have their own chart repo, and this is something that we discovered as well, even with the apps we were maintaining, is the old Kubernetes what was it, incubator and stable chart repo.
Yeah.
They've been deprecated a really long time ago, and then they accidentally got deleted and all the apps broke. So what we're seeing now is the opposite of what was recommended before. They said, put your Helm charts in one big repo so that everybody can find them. And now they're saying, put them in your own one. And I think, who was it? Yesterday told me you can host a Helm chart in Helm with Helm 3 on a Docker Hub. Was that you, Lucas? So we're adding it.
We're using ECR at work to host our internal Helm registry. So still experimental at the moment, publishing charts to container registries, but it's an option. It works.
That might be something that we add to Arkade in the future. If Inlets or OpenFast starts pushing to its repo and to Docker Hub or GHCR, it would be easy for us to add it here without you having to know about it and be aware of that change. Or when we moved MySQL and Postgres, nobody actually knew about all that had gone on and all the work we'd done to sort of support you, because it's just Arkade install.
Yeah, and it just works under the hood. So I've while we've been talking, I've run the command, which just again uses a Go template, and it fills in basically the name and the command into a template, which sets some basic default flags for us, so namespace and whether we want to update the Helm repo when we install it, and then it basically builds this file for us. We have to fill in the info message that we want to display to users, and those to the URL that I copied from here. But apologies for jumping backward and forwards from different screens. And that should be enough. We need to fill it. We've got a few bits and pieces to fill in, mostly documentation, the usage, the example. We've got maybe add some flags later on if we want to add persistence. At the moment, I think default probably won't say this anywhere.
Should we see if persistence is in the docs for that README?
Yeah, sure. So
here's that dreaded values YAML.
Exactly what we've got to do. Persistence, here we are.
Persistence.enabled. Yeah, let's add that flag and show people how that works.
Okay, and I'll go back and try not to jump about. So yeah, if we want to add a flag, this will be a Boolean.
We're using Cobra for the CLI. So if you've worked on the Kubernetes CLI, anything that I created, pretty much all of them use Cobra. There's a little typo in there.
Yeah.
Beauty of a CLI, an IDE.
Anyone want to help?
You can copy and paste it off the docs if you want. Be easier.
Very good.
Performing under pressure here.
I'm not good at spelling at the best of times, as you're aware. There we go.
Without the dot, yeah.
Yeah, so we set that, and then we can set a message for people. Enable.
Paste it in again if you just want to get spelling.
Assistance.
There you go. Looks good to me. And you probably do want the persistence, but by default, we've turned this off for almost all the apps because we just wanted it to work all the time. These days, Kind and K3s both ship with something called the local path provisioner, which is, brilliant for this sort of thing. And it means that you can get volumes. They're not proper volumes, but they're volumes. And so we can basically enable persistence by default now. But when this was first created, it was a different landscape.
Okay. So we've added some code in here to read the value of that flag from the command line. By default, it's set to false. And if someone wants to set -- persistence true, then they'll enable persistence. So what we do is we now add the same flag position, flag depth or whatever from that YAML file into this overrides thing, and we set the value as persistence.
We're going to need to convert that into a string, aren't we? Because these are the flags that get passed directly to Helm. So we don't actually really do much other than, I guess, when you think about operators, the idea was that you're codifying what a human does, and Arkade apps are the same. There's Sander. Sander, hopefully, you're going to be able to use this app if you need to test out influx going forward.
And the beauty of live coding, I've forgotten how to convert a bool to a string.
It is
string
conv. Yeah, I mean, look at that. You don't know how to do it, so you copy and paste, because we've got 40 already. So the chances are, if you don't know and we've not done it before, you probably won't need to do it. And you can ask us as well.
Yeah. So that's now going to automatically gets passed into this set of config here with overrides. and then that should be then available later on. So if I do a go, what I have to do, which I haven't done yet, is
info message as well.
Well, also I've got to register the app with the CLI. So at the moment it won't show up.
Yep.
But we can grab info message. What do we think?
Just paste the chart URL in as part where we are now. I don't know if that is a valid URL.
Probably not. So yeah. And we can say, if you really need extra info, which you probably do because I haven't added any, we can go here.
Excellent.
And then we go to last bit of the puzzle. I think it's in here. And we essentially add another one of these Arkade apps. And what do we call it? Influx.
Hey, look. Addison says, following the existing apps, I've managed to add Argo workflows whilst listening to you on the live stream. How about that? This has already been worth everybody's time because we've already got our first new app. I think it would be cool if we could print out how many apps there are so that I don't have to keep piping to word count and calculating it. Maybe we can add that to the help message at some point. Yeah. Okay.
I'm just trying to.
Well done, Addison. I'm impressed.
Some things to iron out.
And you're right. It isn't very different from Argo CD because it's made by the same company, and we just have so many examples now. One of the things that I was afraid of was that we were just going to get inundated with so many, and maybe some commercial ones that didn't really fit into the open source app. And actually, it's pretty hard to get feedback from open source users because you get hundreds of thousands of downloads. People occasionally tweet about it, but it's pretty difficult to get information. And so if there are apps that you want and CLIs, just let us know. We'll raise an issue for it. Because we built this for you, as well as for us.
Yeah, I've added InfluxDB into the relevant places, and now we can see that we've got that URL printed out for us as part of the info message. I'm going to do K3D.
So you missed the D.
Yeah, K3D. So to get myself a K3s cluster inside Docker. If you haven't used it, it's a really quick way, alternative to Minikube, but uses K3s instead of full-blown Kubernetes.
Yep.
And then it's already changed my context. Yep. And then I can do Arkade install InfluxDB.
So those are all of your local repos.
Yes.
And just checking they're all up to date. And we can see the command that went in there. There's also some output from the chart that we've got. So these are one of the better chart maintainers that have done their due diligence and giving you help. But then at the end, we also have our message, and that's the one that you can get back at any time. You can't easily get back the message that they print out, and that's another reason why we put ours.
So you can see InfluxDB is now running.
So can we port forward from that? I see it's got a -0 on it, so I'm guessing it's a daemon set rather than a... Get a daemon set.
I'd say it's a deployment.
Really? No, it's a stateful set. I'm getting my words mixed up. My Kubernetes object. There you are. So if you had more than one node and replica, they would be influx 0, 1, etc. So if one of them restarts, you can get it back with the same name.
Okay. It's running. Let's try to port forward.
Okay. So the JSON path that they give you for the port forward is marked up. Why don't you just get the pod, and we'll just override the command.
I can use K8s.
Maybe later we can give them a issue or something. Tell them what's wrong.
Okay.
So K9s can do easy port forwarding, and that's something that's also in Arkade.
Can anyone remember what the URL was? 80.
It's 8086.
80.
I know that
86.
because I've been using it with my sensors, and you can't look at that. It's just a REST API, but we can see that it's working, which is brilliant. Now, what if you wanted the influx CLI? Have we got that on Arkade Get? I'm pretty sure we don't, but let's see.
No, we don't.
Okay.
So that's another one to add.
Should we raise an issue for it?
Yeah.
Because I'm pretty sure that by the time we finished, in the next 2 minutes, by the time we finish, there'll be a PR from Addison or Batu, and maybe Simon will practice his Go as well. And give the URL so that it's easy for the person to find it. There's also multiple versions of this. Like you said before, there's the Influx 1 and there's an Influx 2.
Do we know if the CLI is around here somewhere?
Yeah, it's under releases.
FluxDB. And we want the...
Actually, I had to go several pages into the notes to find the version 1. And then maybe we have an Influx... We want an Influx 2 CLI for version 2. Yeah. You can delete most of that. I wouldn't...
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. So that's
and I guess the context of why we want that is always important as well, and it's because we're just adding the Helm chart. So you're going to need the CLI after installing the Helm chart, and the point of Arkade is to make the development easy, experimentation fast. So that's kind of why. Have we got any questions from anybody? We're going to wrap things up shortly, and then Alistair can send his pull request.
I will stop sharing. There we go.
Yeah. What have we got from people? Just looking. We've got of course. So we're going to get that pull request. Excellent. Nitish Kumar is another one of the people that's contributed. So he's been really active as well. And this is a project where, as you saw from the code, even if you don't know what you're doing with Go, you can copy and paste it. If you have got a little bit of experience with Go, then all the better. Again, copy, paste, put your app in. But before you do that, always send an issue. That's how I like to run open source projects and that's how I like to work as well, is just say, do you want this? Is this a good idea? I think it is. This is how I'm going to use it. Make a brief case for it, and then we can look at adding it. Okay. Well, where can you find out more about Arkade? I'm going to say the GitHub repo. And after that, there is a hashtag Arkade. There's other people that use it too, but sometimes you'll see that, or if you just do a search on Twitter, you see some people that are like, where's Arkade been all my life? And if you're wondering who's maintaining it, you can see that on the repo. You can look at who's been committing into it. You're more than welcome to also participate. And I think one of the things that we like is just more blog posts, more use of it, more apps, and feedback. If something doesn't work how you expected, let us know. Uninstallation, that's something that's been requested, but something that we're not so keen on adding because uninstalling an app on Kubernetes can have so many different side effects. It can be pretty difficult to remove it. The point of Arkade is not for you to go to Amazon EKS, pay them $200 a month for a cluster, and use Arkade to set it up. There's different approaches that you might use there, like Argo CD and Flux. This is for experimentation during development. And you might say, well, why would I have two ways of doing things? Are you really going to run Flux on your local laptop while you're developing, I don't know, a new side project. Unlikely. So this has got its use case. You can use it in production because it's just using Helm. But we'd probably go and say, if you want to uninstall, kind delete cluster, kind create cluster. That's a good way of doing it.
Second that.
Okay. Right. Well, thanks, everybody. We're going to sign off now as we've got to the hour. Do subscribe to the channel. Click the button that you can see on the screen right now, because then you'll get notifications when recordings are available and when we have new streams. Do also check out Grow Lab. I think you'll have fun with that. There's a lot of cloud native tech involved, but also really easy stuff to get going and started. So thank you, Michael. And, you know, if you learned something or you liked something, tweet about it. I'm sure me and Alistair would be encouraged to see that and share that with the community as well. Addison, thanks for being here. Appreciate it. And everybody else. All right. So we will see you soon. Goodbye.